right. Hello. Wait, are we live on YouTube? Let's see. We might be. I don't know. Guys, let me just start by saying welcome back to the Lurie Daniel Favor Show here on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. I had to take a little bit of a breath there because there's a lot to cover, and it's going to feel a little bit like a fire hose. Shout out to our friend in Illinois, fire hose Tracy. But we got a lot to cover, and whatever I don't get to, as always, I will, of course, have more extensive conversation in today's podcast episode, which will be released later this afternoon. The podcast, of course, is called Lurie Breaks It Down, where you can get, and it's available anywhere you can get your podcast, but not on YouTube. This is on YouTube. The podcast is everywhere else. But I also hope that you would like and subscribe and share this video because we're doing really, really well. And I appreciate all of you who have been supporting it. I got a lot to cover, and I'm going to start with asking a question. You know how like in our community, how like you got the grown folk table and you got the children's table. And the kids don't get to sit at the grown folk table. And particularly if you're having like a holiday meal or like if it's a repast or like any big family meal, like in our culture, you got the grown folk table and then you got the children table. And we do that because we know that there are problems when you allow children to sit at the grown folk table. I'm just saying that to sort of set the scene and set the tone for today. But actually, before I even get into the children versus the grown folk, I just want to remind you all that there is an election taking place today in Tennessee. It's a special election that is pitting the Trump-backed Republican Matt Van Epps against the Democratic state representative Afton Bain. I told Urban View I could not remember this woman's name. She is a Caucasian woman, and she does not have a traditional American type of name, white American name. Her name is Afton Bain, AFTYNBEHN, and you all need to pay attention to this election if you are in Tennessee. I have no idea what this noise is going outside. I'm streaming from the home studio today, and apparently it's not nearly as soundproof as I thought it was. Sorry, but if y'all can hear that, go with God and help me out. But it's very important because this is the last special election that could be flipped before the midterms. And if this special election is flipped from Republican to Democrat, it is essentially going to mean that most of the MAGA nightmare that we've been living through might actually be stopped because MAGA Mike Johnson will no longer have the majority that he needs. So if you live in this district in Tennessee, I need you to go vote. Assuming that you're registered. Don't be like that Republican man who is the mayor of a whole town. Found out he ain't even a citizen and he been voting for a long time. I'll have to share that story with y'all tomorrow. So make sure you're registered to vote. But if you live in Tennessee's 7th congressional district, which again is usually red as red as rain. I guess rain isn't red. It's always it's blood red. But apparently they have closed the gap from 20 points to a 2-point spread. So it's possible. I don't know. Tennessee, that's going to be up to y'all. Y'all make the decision. Y'all get it done. But later on in the podcast, you'll get a chance to hear some of the video clips that are really highlighting what's at risk here. So I hope that you all who are in the state of Tennessee are paying attention. I want to get now to the story about something that happened to me when I was with my child. I'm not going to say which child it was, but one of my children, when they were about 2, maybe 3 years old, maybe even 4. Basically, it was too old to be doing what I'm finna tell you what happened. Now, in Brooklyn, we have, or really New York City, we have these pharmacies called Dwayne Reed, or y'all know it's like similar to Walgreens or whatnot, but Dwayne Reed was where we was at. And it's shout out to Restoration Plaza in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And my son and my child and I, this is years ago, my child and I are at this Dwayne Reed and we're waiting at the pharmacy. Now, it was a long wait. The child was not very happy to be waiting. And the child was a very well-behaved child, like a phenomenally well-behaved child. But in this particular moment, wasn't no well-behavedness happening. And this child, in a fit of tantrum, which we don't allow, just saying, in a fit of tantrum, this child proceeds to lay in the middle of the aisle and roll their body down, up and down the aisle. I mean, knocking stuff. I was like, whose non-black baby is this? Again, who raised you? It's like, what is happening? So obviously, I went into black mama mode. Snatched that child up. Again, the child will remain nameless. Snatched that child up and basically had to like get him together. And I was grateful that this getting him together was happening in Bedford-Stuyvesant because I was surrounded by black people who understood that I needed to get this child together because this child was not going to be able to grow up to be a WEI. They weren't going to be able to grow up and be a white, entitled, and incompetent. And so some of the elder women who were also at the pharmacy said, you better get them now because if you don't get them today, the world going to get them later. This is a story, yes, about my child, but it's also a story about a white woman by the name of Samantha Fulnecky. Samantha Fulnecky is a junior college student at the University of Oklahoma, and she basically was given an assignment that she failed to respond to. This was an essay. She responded to the essay by essentially writing a whole Facebook post riddled with things like God said, and God made man and women, and God doesn't allow for stereotypes, and God gave us gender roles. Now she didn't ever quote to the Bible. She was so committed to her Facebook post passing as an essay. She never actually quoted the Bible. She just said a whole bunch of words on. It was like if your auntie got a little tipsy and decided to go on Facebook to post about all the things that have pissed her off, or your uncle or somebody who you know don't need to be on social media when they're not in their right frame of mind. She basically did that. I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is KOCO News, where they are actually, no, not this clip. Jonah, let's pull the other clip. I want to hear the brother from Instagram who basically breaks this down. Now, I'm going to explain this in my own frame of mind, but I want you all to pay attention to what this brother says, because he basically puts it in ways that I think anybody could really understand. And so, hold on, let me share the screen. Hold on, Jonah. Don't play it just yet. You know what be happening when we try to play the thing and then we can't play the thing, and then, oh, Lordy Jesus. I'm sorry, y'all. You know, we be producing in real time, so that's just how it be sometimes. All right, hold on. Let me share the screen. We're going to share the screen because y'all going to see this. Y'all be thinking I be hyperbolic, but I be right. All right, now we can play the clip.
This entire situation is a crash course on the modern day Republican. They're going to call you a snowflake, weak and soft, probably throw in a few slurs for demanding equal rights, being a normal person. And then as soon as you check them, boom, soft as Charmin. Samantha Fulnecky, a junior at the University of Oklahoma, she was asked in a psychology class to write an essay on how people are perceived based on societal expectations of gender. The professor gave her a 0. But why? Let's go read some of the essay together. She spent the entire essay using the Bible as fact and evangelizing. God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. God is very intentional with what he makes, and I believe trying to change that would only do more harm. I personally believe that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental as it pulls us further from God's original plan for humans. Society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders and everyone should be whatever they want to be is demonic and severely harms American youth. Ain't a lick of citations in this paper. You're telling us what God does and what he creates and what he thinks and what you think. No scholarly sources, and you didn't even answer the question. And on top of that, read this last paragraph. It's just offensive. It's just mean. So the graduate assistant, who identifies as she, they, by the way, gave a response way nicer than I would on why Samantha failed. You can pause to read these. And they're basically just saying you did not answer the question. You did not sufficiently.
Let's pause the video. Okay, we're going to pause the video because I want you to hear what the professor said to Samantha. Samantha, I am the other instructor for this course, and I've also taken the time to read your paper. I concur with Mel. This is a second professor that had to read the paper. I concur with Mel on the grade you received. This paper should not be considered as a completion of the assignment. Everyone has different ways in which they see the world, but in an academic course such as this, you are being asked to support your ideas with empirical evidence and higher level reasoning. And they go on to say that basically you don't do that at all. Okay, Jonah, we can go back to finish the clip. Let's go.
Do the assignment. So then Turning Point, Oklahoma, Turning Point, yes, Charlie Kirk's Turning Point. They stepped in to fight the case on behalf of Samantha, and they're using the professor's identity to fight back. We should not be letting mentally ill professors around students. And what did the University of Oklahoma do? Well, they placed the graduate assistant on administrative leave to investigate potential discrimination against the student. But a fourth grader could write a better essay than this. It has nothing to do with discrimination. You just can't write. And you're a bigot. And instead of holding this student accountable, the case being fought on behalf of her is just using it as a witch hunt against the transgender professor. Like I said, this is the modern day conservative. And I'd even argue that this is what the conservatives and Republicans have been for the greater part of the last 50 years. This is what happens when kids see politicians saying the most reckless and hateful things and they get away with it.
No, this is what happens. I mean, yes, but this is what happens when you have baby ass children who you don't correct, who you allow to have tantrums, who you don't actually parent, and you just feed a deserving sense of white privilege and mediocrity and basically say, baby, you can be as dumb as hot rocks, but you're white and it's okay. Now, the University of Oklahoma, or the state of Oklahoma, as you saw in the caption there, ranks bottom 5 in just about every educational metric. And shit like this might explain why, when your state university is willing to say, oh, little precious white cisgendered woman who didn't answer the question and couldn't even write better than a 4th grader, don't you hurry now. Don't you worry at all. We're going to take care of you. This is how people then become, like Pete, his own mama say, he's trash, Hexeth, and definitely a war crime committer and murderer. But we're in a situation where essentially now they are accusing, or they're basically using the same arguments that they used to say that people of color and people who were the beneficiaries of diversity, equity, and inclusion are using. They're saying that essentially it's okay to lower the qualifications, to lower the metrics, to accept that Samantha Fulnecky doesn't know how to write and she was not taught anything like bibliographies or citations or source checking. No, she's white. Now, what's interesting about this is that we also find out that her mama was one of the attorneys for the January 6ers. So it all makes sense when you think about it. It's a whole ass household of mediocrity. But her mama then went on socials and said nobody read the assignment. It was an opinion piece. Baby, what I can promise you is this: you and all the rest of us as parents who are paying for our children to go to school, the last thing we are paying for is for them to be able to go spout something that they could have gotten off of a Facebook post from Crazy Aunt Barb and passing that off as academic scholarship. This is college, not trad wife university on the Trump University campus. I'm going to need the whites who are willing and committed to white supremacy as a thing. Could you be superior? Could you at least try to not have us all looking at you like, oh my God, like you as dumb as cold rocks? Could you at least try to pretend like there is some mythological reason why you actually thought that you had some level of intellectual superiority in the first place? Because it's not given superior. It's given mediocre. It's given you let your children throw tantrums in the store when they were younger. You didn't correct them. You didn't raise them. You didn't train them right. Them have no brought up. See, it's given whack ass parenting. But it's also important that we're clear that you are always, as a professor, going to have students who submit papers that, frankly, you disagree with ideologically. She didn't have no citations. She didn't even cite to God. She just said God said it. So we have to recognize that when other people say that they are more deserving than a diversity hire, a black could never. A black student could never, and frankly would never, because they trained better, they raised better, and we aren't allowed to do those sorts of things. So this is, I guess, Samantha Fulnecky will be our first WEI of the week. I've been toying with the fact that there's so many examples of WEI-ness, again, white entitled incompetency, that perhaps we should have a thing. Some people have, animal of the day. Not gonna pull that one into it. Some of them have, whatever, congratulations, you played yourself. We might need to have a WEI of the day category where we just, or week, maybe, I don't know if there's enough for every day. Although I feel like there's definitely enough for every day. Hey, Pam Bondi, how are you doing? Cash Patel, how you doing, bro? But basically, we really now are seeing that this whole effort to say that it was black people who were demanding that standards be lowered, which has never happened. It really was them. This entire time, they know they can't compete. They know that after you have created an entire society where you are only allowed to compete against other people who have never had to compete against real competition, your muscles are flaccid, you're weak, you're limp, you're as strong as a wet noodle. And so when that is your cultural background, and then you see other people who you put all these barriers up for, who have to travail over so many other challenges, and they're able to do so, and then they're also able to be in the spaces you're at because they had to work for it, spaces that you were just given, I'm sure that's got to make you feel a little inferior, which is how we know it's not really a superiority complex. Y'all know the truth. You're the carbon copy, and not even a good one. You're dumb as rocks. But anyway, stick with your mama. She's going to lead you well, because y'all are in the Republican Party, and apparently being stupid is all you need. Being white, entitled, and incompetent. Look at Cash Patel. No, he ain't white, but he is white adjacent. Look at Pete, his own mama say he's trash, Hexeth, who we need to talk about in just a little bit. I also want to remind all of you that one of the reasons that we have the podcast is that when I can't get to all the stories, it's very important that you know that they're being covered somewhere else. There are some really good things happening in Santa Fe. We're not going to have time to go into all of it because I want to get to some of the other things that are happening. I want to update you on some of the news from yesterday. But Santa Fe, New Mexico, is now linking wages to rental prices. This is the first time it's being done in the nation. And basically, they're linking the amount of money that you make to housing affordability. And they're doing so because they want to counter the high rents that are being charged all across the country by tying their minimum wage increase increases to consumer prices. So remember before how I've said it's not enough to have a minimum wage. You have to have a minimum wage that's tied to some indices. You know, it's tied to the cost of living. So as the cost of living increases, so does your wage, your hourly wage. As the whatever other index you're looking at, as those things increase, if the cost of housing, if that's one of the indices, then as the cost of housing increases, so should your wage. And Santa Fe has done a lot of work to make sure that this is not going to have negative impacts on mom and pop stores, small businesses. So shout out to them. I cover this way more extensively in the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that this is happening because it's going to impact at the outset around 9,000 workers who are going to get a bump in their wages once this kicks in. That's 20% of their workforce. 20% of their workforce is going to get an increase in wages. So we don't have to be in a situation where poverty is the only option. There are really smart people out there doing really good things, and I want you all to know about this because this is something that could be replicated elsewhere. But unfortunately, we're going to have to talk about it in the podcast because I ain't got time for it right now. However, I want to return to something that took place yesterday. We talked about this yesterday. We talked about it extensively because it was massive, right? So we have learned a whole lot since yesterday's news where we were talking about the fact that P, his own mama, say he's trash. And yesterday I was saying, and possibly a war criminal. Now I'm going to just say P, his own mama, say he's trash, and a whole ass murderer, Hegseth, is really feeling the pinch. Now I will say, I did think that they were going to prepare to throw Pete Hegseth under the bus. I did not realize there were some other bodies that they were going to roll over before they get to Pete Hegseth. And that sound that you hear, as I said to Urban View, that might be the sound of Admiral Mitch Bradley squealing as he realizes the bus of the Republican administration is rolling all over him. You may recall that P, his own mama, say he's trash and definitely a murderer, Hegseth, had given some orders. They wanted to strike, and we talked yesterday how they weren't successfully able to destroy this boat entirely. There were 2 people who were found to be clinging from wreckage from the ship, and then they did the thing that you're never supposed to do because it's a violation of laws, international and domestic, and the military code of justice. They basically bombed again. Now, I know people are stuck on this double tap situation, the fact that they bombed that same ship again. I just want to be clear. You don't have authority to murder anybody. Like anybody. You're in international waters. We're not at war with any particular nation against which these people might be, from which these people are coming. You don't have the right to murder anybody. America. Just wanted to put that out there. I know everyone's focusing on the fact that they struck once and they had to strike again. And that is a clear example of what you're not supposed to do. In fact, it talks about in the military code of justice, when they give you an example of a lawful or an unlawful order, that you're not supposed to follow. One of the examples that they give in the military code of justice is basically if someone is shipwrecked, you're not allowed to bomb them. Exactly what P, his own mama, say he's trash, and most definitely a murdering war criminal, Hegseth, exactly what he did. And so we are now seeing the pushback because Pete Hegseth decided to put out a statement. He basically said, I fully support the admiral and the decision that he made to destroy those ships. I fully support Admiral Mitch Bradley because when Admiral Mitch Bradley made the decision, not me, Peter's own mama say he's trash and definitely a war criminal, Hegseth, not me. I'm not the one who did it. It was the admiral who did it. And then the admiral did all of it. And then so everybody who was with the admiral and working with the admiral, I fully stand by their decision to violate international law. And I'm going to defend them. And I didn't know anything about it, but I support their right to do it. That's what you now hear coming out of the White House and coming out of Pete Hegseth's mouth. But I want you all to realize that the thing that they don't seem to know is that there's evidence, right? Because they're so foolish and so WEI full of themselves. We had essentially a whole lot of footage where Pete, his own mama, say he's trash and was going on Fox News talking about all the things that they were doing and the strikes and the double strikes. And he gave a whole speech about how we're not going to worry about any rules of law. We're not basically calling the rules of law pansy rules. We don't follow those rules because we're tough. We're Biff. We're America. Whew. That's kind of like the approach that they've been taking. So I'm sure, was a shock to them when people began pulling up clips of like Pete saying that like, oh, yeah, I was there the whole time. I watched the whole time. Amina, do we have that clip where they were talking about this? Okay. I want you all to take a listen to this clip and watch the video because this is Pete talking in his own words before he realized he got. And boy, did he get got. Take a listen.
So the president is sending a message to other cartels, right?
A very clear one. I can tell you that was definitely not artificial intelligence. I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat.
Oh, did you?
We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States, trying to poison our country with illicit drugs.
Now, okay, that's so curious to me because you watched it live. which means you was with the admiral. Y'all don't, unless y'all be screening this on, Facebook, on your Signal chats, because, he is also the same man who, like, exposed all the military secrets, unclassified information on Signal in a group chat that basically included a whole ass reporter for a news outlet that did not like this Trump administration. So I'm saying that. But you were there watching. And unless the admiral was live streaming this event via your insecure Signal chat, that means you was in the room with him. That means you were making the decision, because what's the order of command? Pete, his old mama say he's trash and a war criminal. Heck says, what's the order of command? You the Department of War Secretary or the Department of Defense Secretary. Then come the admirals. What is happening? So all the evidence that people are now pulling up and the news clips and the tweets and the funky attitude, because they were swaggering with it, child. When they started bombing these boats out of the middle of the sky, they were slinging it around like they just had nobody who they had to answer to. And now all of a sudden they've grown limp. They've grown flaccid. They're not able to really do the work of standing on business. They can't stand on nothing right now. They're as strong as wet noodles. Strong as wet noodles. But this is what it looks like when you allow children to sit at the grown-ups table. And in this example, the children are the Republican Party. It's the white nationalists. It's people who have been committed to an ideology and a belief system that, quite frankly, is trash. As trashy as you are, and you are trash. This is some trash-ass, human-ass shit to do. You are talking about, we know exactly who they were. We know exactly what was on that ship. Well, then, where's the evidence, Cletus? Where's the evidence? How do you know? Show and prove. Pete, his own mama said he's trash, and a whole ass big pack of trash at that. Show and prove. Because what you showed us was that you knew exactly who was on the boat. You knew where they were coming from. You watched it. You were watching it live. And then come to find out, you said they were part of this gang. Ain't no evidence. Ain't no evidence. And now the whole world is looking at you like you're a war criminal. Now, here's the thing. I know you plan on getting a pardon from Donald Trump. And in fact, the admiral, who I'm sure is like realizing the fuckery that he has got himself into. This is why, as a soldier or a person who is a part of the military community, you don't obey false orders. You don't obey unlawful orders, because when they decide to roll that bus over you, it's going to sound like Pete Hegseth whispering sweet nothingness in your ear. And we now have a situation where everybody who is hoping that they will be pardoned for this is now going to have to toe the line. They're now going to have to not make the administration look bad as the administration actually does look. And they're going to have to do so because they want Donald Trump to pardon them. But here's the thing. International laws still exist. So if you get your pardon, that's great. I hope you like vacationing at Mar-a-Lago. I hope you like seeing the 50 United States, because as soon as you leave the boundaries of these United States, you're in international space. And once that happens, once you have been charged with war crimes and they prosecute you either with you there or in absentia, good luck figuring out how you're going to get to anywhere outside of the 50 United States, outside of these here United States. Good luck figuring that out, because the rest of the world is angry. The rest of the world can't stand your ass. Frankly, the rest of the world has had it with America generally. I'm not saying that it's misplaced energy, but I am going to say that we now have multiple examples of something that we can never, ever, ever bring with us into the new era. The new era that we are going to be establishing, that we're going to be building in the aftermath of all of this. We can never allow the white entitled incompetents to have a position of power, authority, or deference ever again. Now, I don't know if this all had to happen to shake us out of our malaise, out of the coma, that intentionalized infliction of white nationalist ideologies and the internalization thereof. I don't know if all of this stuff had to happen so that we would wake the fuck up. But now that we see it, never again can these people presume to have any position of authority, any position of power. As we are rebuilding the world, it can never, never, no, never be one that centers them and their ilk, because they are sick beings. They are sick, they are trashy, and quite frankly, the truth ain't in them. But that devil show is. All right, we're going to stop it here and head to commercial break. Urban View, we will be back in just a bit. YouTube, I appreciate y'all as always. Much more to come on the Lurie Daniel Favorite Show.